What's up everybody, this is the Elegant Academy and today we're going to make this Sci-Fi Material Substance designer. So before we begin, I need to mention a few things. You need to have some basic understanding of Substance Designer, and you need to grab yourself the free template, link in the first comment. This will save you a lot of headache. First thing first, we need to create the main pattern for the Sci-Fi material. So to create that, create a tile random. We're only gonna change the interstice to 0 and we're going to change the color random like this and the interstice so we don't have borders for each shape. After that, you need to duplicate the node. To duplicate the node, select and hit Ctrl D. And now we have a duplicated node. To replicate what I've did here, I played with the amount and I changed the seed, played with the seed, and finally I increased the mask random till I get something I am happy with. After that, we're going to create a threshold node that's going to act as a mask. And to demonstrate how we are going to blend these two. So even though this is called blend, we are actually overlaying the first one on top, actually we are overlaying the second one on top of the first one, using the blend node, using a mask with a threshold. So don't be confused here. Just to make it clear, what we're basically doing, using the mask, we are able to mask out the black spot and we are just layering the second texture on top of the first one. So we're creating two layers here. And after that you can create an edge detect to create the final pattern. But what I've done here, I added a third layer and then I added an edge detect. You can play with it until you get something you like and then you can plug it into an edge detect and see the result. Now here we are going to create a flood fill. And this is going to allow us to create a random color appear tile. And what this is allowing us to do, it's allowing us to add imperfection to the tile. And to demonstrate this, we're going to plug the standard pattern to the height that we just created. As you can see here, our panels are sharing the same height. And that is not creating an interesting result. And by plugging the flood fill to a random grayscale, as you can see, we already have a much better variation. And we can play with it until we get something we like. We can use a blend with a multiply mode and we can slide it to get the right elevation we want, if that makes sense. And we are adding also a flood fill to gradient and plugging it into another blend with a multiply. And that is also giving us imperfection and variation to the final texture. Now another thing we are doing here, we are smoothing out the edges. And we are not using a blur here. We are using a bevel. And this is the original pattern we created, and this is the bevel node. I don't have a very high amount on the distance. I just need to get a little bit of smoothness on the edge. And I'm also blending it slightly. I'm not really over blending it with the original one, using only This is this float value at 1 is representing 100%, and the float value at 0.7 is representing 27%, and this is set to multiply. The original, this is the one, this is the base texture, and this is the beveled pattern, and it's set to multiply. And now if we applied it, it's just adding a tiny bit of depth to the texture, and like just subtle changes can make a huge difference in texturing. Now we're going to create a few modules that are going to connect to create the final roughness. The first one is a fine detail pass, and to create it we're going to create a for node for 2, and after doing that you can add either a transform or a safe transform. I recommend adding a safe transform. The difference between transform and safe transform is that when you are doing the transform you can actually destroy the tiling of, as you can see here, we can destroy the tiling of the texture, whereas safe transform, the first it restrains the rotation by 45 degree, so you can only rotate 45 degree at a time. Second, if you want to tile it, you can tile it. If you want to offset it, you can offset it, but that will not destroy the tiling of the texture. So this is why I recommend safe transform. And rotating it like a 45 degree. Actually, this is a 90 degree. Now to blend them together, add a Berlin noise and plug it to the opacity, and the background is the first one and the foreground the second one. And this way we have, as you can see, we are having something like a fabric. After that you need to create a fractal sum base, but here fractal sum base, just let me tell you a few things here. First, the roughness going to be a little bit higher, and you need to play with the value here so you can get something much more even than the default one. The default one is actually really bad for this purpose. Now after that we're going to use a warp node, and we're gonna plug the fractal sum into the base of the node, and we're going to plug the fur into the factor and play with it until you get something along the line of this. The reason why we have a texture like this, because it's giving us a base, and you can think of base texture as like a base color in painting being blended with another base color to produce a secondary color. So these two bases are producing a third texture, and these two serve as the foundation of roughness. This texture we created is helping us to get that brushed metal feeling and helping us get a little bit of fogginess to resemble an actual metal. Materials in real life, they get damaged, scratched, they get a lot of imperfect textures. You need to use a lot of texture to resemble the imperfection in the materials. Now the second layer is a fog. It's just, we can make the metal a little bit more foggy. To achieve that, we have a grunge map 2, like literally grunge map 2. and a directional warp. Now in the directional warp, I'm plugging the same map twice, and after plugging it twice, I'm using a make tile. If you type in make tile, make it tile batch grayscale, and after that, batch, not photo. After that, we play with the octave until we get the 0 octave. What this is doing, this is giving us a tiled map, but it's giving us a smaller detail. And we're going to blend the bigger detail with a smaller detail, just with a normal copy and 50% opacity, just so we can get a texture with smaller and bigger detail blended together. Now we have a multi-directional warp using a moisture noise, so we can get a little bit of that fogginess. Multi-directional warp, you can play with the direction. I find this to be fine. And now we have a foggy texture and we have a base texture. These two are blended. Now what we are doing here, we are taking that blended base and we are blending it with a uniform color, set to grayscale of course, and we are setting a specific value. Basically what we are doing here, we are trimming any value below 0.48. Like if you imagine a grayscale, we're basically trimming all the value here. After that, I'm creating two variants. One to go for the border and one to go for the metal. And I am using the same texture as before, but before we even bevel it. So I'm using this or even this. They are the same one. So the one that is going to go through the background is actually the one for the borders. I'm using here a levels just to make it a little bit lighter so it can be more rough. And the second one, I'm using a contrast node to make it more contrasted. And I'm using a multi-directional warp, plugging the same texture twice, just so I can get the brushed metal feel. Now to explain the differences, I'm going to actually plug them to the roughness. This is the rough one, as you can see here, and this is the darker one that is used for metal part. Now to create the metallic base texture, we're going to use repeat the same fur, but this time it's not for 2, it's for 3. And we're going to repeat the same process as before to get a map that looks like this. And we're gonna create a messy fiber texture. And we're going to plug it into a multi-directional warp using the messy fiber as the factor and the base as the fur. Now we're going to create a grunge map 6, plugging it into another multi-directional warp. This time we are getting distortion and we are getting the same brushed feeling as before. And now we're plugging it into a grayscale. And the way I generated this map, I actually tested out if we here can create a color, a uniform color, and set it to grayscale. The way you know the correct values, you can test them out like this on this is plugged directly into the metallic. Again, check the template and see what values are going to work best, and then the two values that are going to work best, I plug them here. And the reason why we are doing this to the metallic map is we're going to add a little bit of imperfection to the metallic map. As you can see here, we can switch it off. This is without the imperfection, and this is like, it's just adding a little bit of imperfection and depth. I've never seen this being done before. I forgot to mention this, but in Unreal Engine, the values are slightly different. The roughness and metallic values can differ. So you need to test them out and know what could work best in the Unreal Engine, since we are going to export this into Unreal Engine. Now for the circuit board, first, the reason why we are doing a circuit board is because we are going to use it to create the neon light patterns or the neon light mask. So for this is also the holes or the damaged part of the panels. So to create this, we're going to add a tile sampler. Create a tile sampler and tile sampler. And basically what we need to change here, we need to input this shape and we need to change the pattern into an input shape, and we need to change the scale, and we need to change the rotation random. What the rotation random is doing here is basically randomizing, flipping half of the tile 90%. You can play with the shape here to get something like this, and like you can play with it until you have the result you want. Now to make this pattern a little bit more interesting, you can just slide the color mask. You can change the color mask and you can change the mask random, which is going to delete some of the pattern. You can also try this. You can also flip this if you want. It's going to create an interesting result. This is going to give us something along the line of this. This is going to give us something along the line of this, and I destroyed the pattern. And after that we can plug it into, as you can see here, we can plug it into reaction diffusion, and we can decrease the radius, and we can play with the contrast until we get something we are satisfied with, and we get a circuit board like pattern. Now I have created a final one with me looked like this. You don't really need to create the full pattern for this tutorial, for this material, but if you guys want, I would make another video about this. And the reason why we created this pattern in the first place, because what we are going to do, we're going to create the neon light from the pattern using a tile generator, just a very simple tile generator, not a tile sampler, and increasing the amount to the point where you are happy. And after that, you can just slide a random mask until you get to the point where you are satisfied, and you'll get something along the line of this. But we can use tile random. What I've done in here, I've only changed few parameter. Just let me increase this a little bit just to show you. I've only changed few parameter. The first two one are these. The amount x and y set to 80. And the second two are the random x and the random y. What these two are doing are basically like multiplying, subdividing many of the boxes, and the threshold amount too. Where is this threshold? Size, amount, shape, position. Yeah, threshold amount and the random x and y. After that you need a very high amount on the mask random, just so you can delete most of the boxes. After that, you're going to use the circuit board pattern, add a safe transform, and in the safe transform you're going to do a tile 2. And what tile 2 is doing here, imagine this is the circuit board pattern and this is the safe transform. Basically, we're creating 4 tiles from the same pattern. So we're increasing the density of the detail. We're increasing the detail density. And after that, so this is the tile random, and then we are blending it with multiply. It does not matter what order they are in here when it comes to multiply. And after the multiply, we're using another safe transform just so we can increase the density again, so we can create a fine details for the neon light. And as you can see here, the value here isn't really too high, and that's actually very good for the emission texture. Now, this tutorial won't take, in order not to make this tutorial 4 hours long and no one would watch it, I would actually want to give you just a highlight of my finished product here. So this is the damaged part, or the holes, and basically they are literally the same as the one I showed you for the circuit board, with one exception. I've used mask map input, and I inputted this shape, and if you go down to the color, we have a mask map threshold. Now if I decrease it, we're going to get a pattern similar to the one we used to see. And if I increase it a lot, we're going to get a black texture. So we just need to find the right amount to create something like this. And I'm just using variation here of the same trick just to get something like this. And I'm plugging it as a mask. Now let me show you the color and the First, let me go over the color. Now, the circuit board, here I'm using a brown color, just so it can be more fitted with the finished finished product color. So all the colors should be harmonious. I'm using 3 different main colors. One is more on the cyanic green side with very desaturated color, and one is like brownish desaturated, and one is like literally gray for the base color of the metal. And for the base color of the metal, we are using the same base as the metal base, so the metal base texture. Now for the neon light, I'm using 4 different colors. This is the one I created for the tiny colors, for the tiny light. And these are the one we created first. And this one in the blue is actually using the exact same trick as before I showed you here, but without the mask, without the mask map input. But we are using the mask of the generated holes to mask it out. So here I have 3 masks. I'm using the border. This one is using the border as a mask, and the tiny one is actually using the metallic panel as a mask. So we're removing the black part. We're removing the white part, and here or here. No. Now here we are using the damaged part as a mask, and we are masking out these neon colors, neon light mask. And the way you can do that, the way you can mask out, we're going to use the main pattern so we can show you. I can mask them out. Or I actually can use a tile. The way you can mask this out is by adding a multiply. Or you can subtract it. There is really only 2 ways to do this, by either subtracting or multiplying. And you would use the mask. You would create you would mask a mask. You would create a mask from subtracting or multiplying 2 masks together. Yep, this has been the Elegant Academy. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more Substance tutorial, I just need 20 likes and 5 comments. So bye bye, see ya. I hope you enjoyed this video.